in order to kind of go through this more finely, we would look at purpose. What am I trying to accomplish? I had a student this semester write an interesting essay on note taking and whether note taking was better on a computer or handwritten. And so before we make an opinion on that, and you might be tempted right now to make that opinion, we should hold off and say, what am I trying to accomplish? What do I want to know here? What's my central aim or my purpose? We would think of a central aim might be, is this better for efficiency? Is it better for memory? Is it better for maybe application of the knowledge that we're getting? What's your purpose in looking at note taking? And then as we're researching, we're going to check periodically to make sure that we're still on target with what we're trying to accomplish. We don't want to get lost in the evidence and stray from our topic. We want to keep that focus in mind. Then we want to choose significant and realistic purposes. We don't want to become too idealistic in our topic. We don't want to say that handwriting is notes are going to revolutionize education in the next 5 years. We don't want to say that one system is perfect and the other system is horrible. We want to be realistic about what we're trying to figure out here. Next, we're going to look at information. What information am I using in coming to my conclusion? We might want to look at testimony from students. We're thinking of what information will I need to kind of answer the questions that I'm coming up with. And then we can look at our own experience. What experience have I had to support this claim? Is it matching? Now, be aware that in bringing in your own experience, you're just giving one small sample of information. And this could cause that hasty generalization where we say, my experience was that handwriting notes is better, therefore it's better for everyone. We don't want to make that type of claim, but we do want to compare what the studies are showing with our experience to see if we need to dig further. If all of the studies are saying handwritten notes are better, and you find that you remember the notes that you type on a computer better, again, dig further to see why there is this discrepancy here. And then what information do you need to settle the question? Have we gained all of the information that we can now confidently start to make a claim or at least a temporary thesis? We're going to again look at inferences and conclusions. We're going to say, how did I reach this conclusion? Am I still making assumptions or am I not getting good information? Am I looking at newspapers and magazines instead of academic studies? I mean, how am I getting to the conclusion that I've reached? And then is there another way to interpret the information? So we know that statistics and data, they can be interpreted in multiple ways. Am I interpreting it correctly? What is the validity of the information? Again, if I'm using newspapers, is that as valid as an academic source? Am I using student testimony? If so, is this valid information, or does this information have flaws that I need to address? And we don't want to make any claims outside of that data. We don't want to insert opinion that's unsupported or has nothing to back it. Next, we're going to look at concepts. So in our topic, are there concepts that are going to need to be explained prior to getting into the argument? For example, I did my thesis on humor and how humor works. One of the things that was mentioned is perspect, which is a word that I don't even know if it's in the dictionary. And so if I use this word, I'm going to need to define it. And what it is it's a reframing of a situation. So imagine if your grandmother falls on the ice and you laugh. You're not really laughing at your grandmother because there's concern there that she might be hurt. You're laughing at this reframing or imagined image of a grandmother falling, but not necessarily yours, just somebody who looks like your grandmother and is falling in the same way. So we want to think of what is the main idea here and can I explain this idea? The main idea of Perspect is to say that we might laugh at things that are inappropriate or even scare us, but we're reframing it. So can I explain that to the reader? What are the key concepts to know within our argument? I've read many arguments on things like skiing or horseback riding. These are things that I've never done. And so I need to know some of those key concepts before you get into your argument. Then any assumptions. What am I taking for granted? Are there any assumptions that have led me to a conclusion? For example, if we look at something like teacher pay in college, I might assume that everybody wants teachers to make more money. This seems to be put forth on the news. It seems to be put forth in general opinion, but that is an assumption that I'm making, and I might need to go back and research to see if that's true. And then how are my assumptions shaping my point of view? Again, if I assume that everybody wants to see teachers make more money, that's going to shape my point of view in a biased or prejudiced way. Next, we're going to look at the implications or consequences. If somebody accepted my position, what would be the implication? Or what am I implying? So if I argue that teachers should make more money, what's the impact of going forth with that position? We could look at negative aspects like higher taxes. We could also look at positive aspects like better teaching or schools being able to attract better teachers. So I just want to look at what are the implications or what's going to happen if my position is accepted. And I want to consider all possible consequences. Again, I don't want to just look at the negative and I don't want to just look at the positive. I want to think of what are all the consequences that could happen if you take my position. Next, we're going to look at points of view. From what point of view am I looking at the issue? Let's look at another topic that a student has chosen, which is speech codes in the university. These are codes that are placed on speech that you can't say certain things, or you're not allowed to say certain things, or you might be punished. If we could look at this from a student's point of view, this could be looked at negatively, saying that you're stifling my speech and you're stifling my voice, stifling my opportunity to make an opinion within a class. We could also look at the student view of this as a good thing because it's not going to create a hostile environment for me because that speech is being monitored. If ever there's hostile speech, then it will be dealt with. We could also look at it from the university's perspective. Is this something that we can even uphold? Or do we have to allow freedom of speech? What happens if we need to correct speech? Are we willing to apply the consequences that we've given? We can look at it from the teacher's perspective. Do I now have to monitor that speech? And am I in trouble if I don't curtail it? Or am I in trouble if I start punishing students for just speaking their minds? So we want to look at it from these multiple points of view. And is there another point of view I should consider? You know, we might think of this as the general public's point of view on speech codes. How is that going to affect them? And we want to strive to be fair-minded in putting ourselves in these different roles. Okay? Again, the purpose is to understand the topic, not to debate it until we understand it. And then we think of questions. We can ask, what question am I raising? I might look at avenues like, is a school even allowed to use a speech code? Or I might look at issues as far as, Is a college's speech code in alignment with legal speech codes? And then what question am I addressing? Am I getting back to that original question that I started with? So you can see if you go through this process, you're going to be a better thinker. So critical thinking is something that we can employ in our everyday lives as well as within our essays.